The unseen threat. The quiet hum of Earth's defense network was suddenly shattered by an unexpected, high-priority alert. A distress signal, sharp and clear, cut through the routine chatter of military channels. But there was something off about it, something that made the hairs on the back of the officers' necks stand up. It wasn't like any SOS they had received before. The signal came in bursts of static, mixed with a strange, rhythmic beat, like a heartbeat pounding from across the void of space. The transmission was weak, broken, and the origin was unknown. All they knew was that the signal had been sent from deep within the uncharted sectors of space, an area Earth had barely explored. Captain Alex Kane sat at his command station, eyes locked on the blinking red lights of the console. The data from the signal flickered in front of him, a puzzle he couldn't yet solve. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of how to react. This wasn't normal. The source was too far, too isolated for any known ally to be in distress. "Any idea where it's coming from?" asked Lieutenant Morales, a sharp young officer standing behind him. Kane shook his head. "The signal's too fragmented. We're getting a rough estimate, but nothing concrete." They both knew what this meant. Every minute that passed without clarity was one that could spell danger. In a universe full of hostile alien races, every signal could be a trap, a clever way to lure Earth's forces into a deadly ambush. They couldn't afford to ignore it, yet they also couldn't risk walking into a situation they weren't prepared for. "We need to respond," Morales insisted. "If this is a trap, we'll have no chance if we don't act fast." Kane's fingers moved across the console, contacting Earth's Central Military Command. "Get me a team together. We're heading out." The response was swift. Within minutes, a small fleet of ships was prepped for departure. They were Earth's latest generation of warships, advanced, powerful, but still untested in true combat. The fleet was to rendezvous with the source of the signal, located in the fringes of the galaxy, where the stars themselves seemed distant and cold. The journey felt like an eternity. As Earth's fleet made its way through the empty expanse of space, Captain Kane couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. There was something wrong about this mission. The signal had not come from any known civilization, and the more he thought about it, the more uneasy he became. If there was one thing Kane knew, it was that the universe wasn't full of friendly faces. The vast emptiness they were traveling through was both beautiful and terrifying, a place where danger could emerge from any direction. The fleet dropped out of warp speed, and the vast darkness of deep space stretched out before them. Kane's eyes scanned the empty blackness as his ship approached the last known coordinates of the signal. There were no signs of life, no ships in the vicinity. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. "This is it," Kane murmured to himself. Suddenly, the communication systems flared to life again. The signal, weak at first, began to pulse stronger, clearer. The rhythmic heartbeat grew louder, as if something was calling them. "Prepare for close-range scanning," Kane ordered. His team was ready, hands at their stations, eyes glued to their screens. There was no turning back now. The signal was coming from a planet, one that had been off the maps for centuries. The planet appeared on their sensors. It wasn't a place they recognized. From the reports coming in, the planet was rich in minerals and resources, but there were no records of any civilization. It was barren, unexplored. Yet the signal was coming from the surface. "Set course for the planet," Kane commanded. "Alert all ships to stay on high alert. We don't know what we're walking into." As the fleet descended into the planet's atmosphere, a sense of unease grew among the crew. They could see the planet's surface now, a harsh, rocky terrain stretching as far as the eye could see. It looked dead, abandoned, but the signal pulsed with an unnatural urgency, beckoning them closer. "Captain," said Lieutenant Morales, her voice tense, "we're picking up life signs on the surface. But they're faint, too faint." "Faint," Kane repeated, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Like something is hiding, or Before Morales could finish, the sensors flared, signaling an incoming transmission. The ship's speakers crackled to life, and a voice, distorted, panicked, and unmistakably human, filled the air. "Please, help us. We're under attack. They're everywhere. They won't stop. The Empire. It's too late. We need. The transmission cut out suddenly, leaving only a haunting silence in its wake. The hairs on the back of Kane's neck stood up. His fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair. That was it. The confirmation they needed. The Empire was here. But this didn't make sense. The Empire was far away, hundreds of light years from this planet. How could they be here? And why wasn't Earth's fleet aware of this before? How could they have missed it? "Activate full shields," Kane ordered, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Get me a direct line to Central Command. Now." The bridge was tense as they orbited the planet, waiting for orders. They couldn't afford to waste time. The warning had come, and now, the real danger was just beginning. But Kane couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. This was no mere attack. There was something more, something hidden beneath the surface. As the fleet prepared to land and investigate further, the stars above the planet seemed to grow darker. The unknown planet had become a dangerous enigma, one that would soon change everything for Earth. The signal had been the first step in uncovering a terrible truth, one that they weren't yet ready to face. The real question was, who or what was behind this attack? And why had it been kept hidden for so long? The arrival of the Deathworlders. Captain Kane stood at the bridge, staring out into the blackness of space. The fleet was in position above the desolate planet, the engines humming softly in the background. His mind raced with questions. The distress signal had been sent out by someone, but who? The voice had been human, but what did it mean by the Empire? No one had ever spoken of such an enemy in recent history. Was Earth truly prepared for whatever threat lay ahead? Before he could ponder further, the ship's communication officer, Lieutenant Morales, turned towards him, her face as serious as ever. "Captain, we've received an incoming transmission. It's not from the planet, but from another location." Kane raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, not from the planet?" "There's a fleet approaching. At high speed. They're coming in fast, but their ships are unlike anything we've seen before." Kane's heart skipped a beat. "Are they hostile?" Morales didn't hesitate. "They don't appear to be enemies, but they're not Earth's allies either. These ships, they're human." The silence in the bridge was deafening. Earth had no other fleets in this part of the galaxy. The idea that there was another fleet of human ships, ones they didn't recognize, was troubling. It raised more questions than answers. "Alert the fleet. Prepare for whatever this is," Kane said, his voice calm but filled with the weight of the unknown. As the unknown ships approached, Kane watched through the observation windows of the ship, the strange fleet growing larger with every passing moment. These weren't regular Earth ships. The vessels that hovered in front of them looked ancient. Their hulls were scarred by time and battle, built with dark metal that gleamed under the light of distant stars. Kane's stomach tightened. What were these ships, and why did they look like they had fought and survived countless wars? The fleet was soon close enough that the details became clearer. The ships were massive, some larger than Earth's warships, others smaller but heavily armed. Their markings were unrecognizable, a set of symbols none of Earth's databases could match. They didn't belong to any known faction. Kane and his crew were still trying to process the sight when the ships began to land. One by one, the massive vessels hovered and touched down on Earth's landing platforms. The crew watched in awe as the ships lowered their ramps, and the first figures began to emerge. At first, Kane couldn't believe his eyes. The figures that walked out of the ships weren't like any human soldiers he had ever seen. They were taller than average humans, with broad shoulders and fierce eyes. Their faces were hardened, covered in scars from long battles on unknown worlds. Their uniforms were unlike anything Earth's forces had ever worn, dark, weathered, and covered with strange insignia. They looked like warriors, survivors of brutal, unforgiving worlds. Their very presence exuded a sense of strength, a ferocity that made Kane's soldiers uneasy. "These are the Deathworlders," whispered Morales, her voice filled with awe. She had heard stories, but never thought she would meet one in person. "Deathworlders," Kane repeated, his eyes narrowing as he studied the newcomers. "Humans, but from planets where survival is a daily struggle. Their species evolved on worlds so dangerous, so hostile, that only the strongest, most deadly humans survived. They are warriors, genetically enhanced through generations of living on these hostile worlds. They are the last hope for any race unlucky enough to face extinction." Kane was still processing the information when the leader of the Deathworlders stepped forward. He was larger than the rest, with a broad, muscular frame and cold eyes that scanned the area. His voice boomed across the landing platform. "We are the Vanguard," the man said in a deep, gravelly voice. "We were called by your signal. We fought against the Empire before, and we will fight again. But we need your help. Together, we will face the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known." The words hung heavy in the air. The Empire. The same empire that had attacked the planet the SOS had come from. The same empire that had been on the move, conquering and destroying civilizations across the galaxy. "We're ready to fight," Kane said, stepping forward with determination. "But why now? Why haven't we heard of you before?" The Deathworlder leader's eyes darkened as he glanced toward the sky. "We've been watching, waiting. You weren't ready. But now, you have no choice." Kane felt a shiver run down his spine. The weight of what the Deathworlders were saying wasn't lost on him. The Empire wasn't just a military force. It was an empire that had crushed countless civilizations. And now, Earth was in its sights. The leader of the Deathworlders continued. "The Empire is ruthless. They will come for your world. And when they do, you must be ready." The silence that followed was heavy with fear and anticipation. Kane stared at the soldiers before him, knowing that the fate of Earth rested on the shoulders of these warriors. They had no choice but to trust them. Hours later, Kane stood with the Deathworlders in a private briefing room. The plan was simple. Earth's fleet would fight alongside the Deathworlders' forces to repel the Empire's forces. But there was more to it. The Deathworlders had a weapon, something that Earth had never seen before, and it was their only hope against the Empire's overwhelming might. Kane studied the leader, trying to understand what had brought these warriors to Earth. They weren't just mercenaries or hired soldiers. They were here because they had their own reasons. Their history was marked by war, and now they had chosen to help Earth. "We will fight with you," Kane said, his voice firm. "But I need to know everything. How do we stop them?" The Deathworlder leader nodded slowly. "We don't stop them. We annihilate them." The weight of those words hung in the air. The fate of humanity now lay in the hands of these warriors, Deathworlders, the last line of defense against a relentless, powerful enemy. Outside the room, the first steps of Earth's resistance were already being set into motion. The Deathworlders were preparing, but they had made one thing clear. Earth was not ready for the war that was about to begin. But together, they would face the storm. And Kane knew that the world they had once known, peaceful and free, was about to change forever. The true battle was only just beginning. The Empire strikes. The preparations were fast and fierce. Earth's fleet, augmented by the mysterious Deathworlders, began to organize. Captain Kane stood in front of the briefing table, overlooking the strategy maps that outlined the enemy's projected path. Every moment felt like a countdown, and the pressure was mounting. Despite the firepower Earth now had, Kane couldn't help but feel the weight of the impending battle. The Deathworlders' weapons were unlike anything they had, their technology far beyond what Earth's scientists had ever imagined. Yet even with that edge, there were no guarantees. They were facing an empire that had already crushed civilizations across the galaxy. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their very existence. "They'll be here soon," Kane muttered to Lieutenant Morales, who was studying the schematics next to him. "And when they arrive, we have to be ready." Morales glanced at him, her face filled with a rare mixture of determination and worry. "Are we ever truly ready, Captain? This is unlike anything we faced before." Kane didn't have an answer. Earth had fought wars, sure, but this was on another scale. A galaxy-spanning empire, relentless, efficient, and deadly. No one knew how to fight something like that. Not even the Deathworlders. "Are the Deathworlders ready?" Kane asked, his voice betraying the tension that gripped him. "They are," Morales replied. "They fought against the Empire before, but they keep things quiet. They don't tell us everything, Captain. There's a lot they're still holding back." Kane sighed. He didn't trust the silence, the mystery surrounding the Deathworlders' true strength. But he had no choice but to put his faith in them. They were the only thing standing between humanity and total annihilation. The hours passed, and the fleet finally entered the high alert phase. The Deathworlders, with their impressive fleet, had moved into position above the planet's outermost orbit. They stood ready, as if they had done this 1,000 times before, their ships brimming with ancient firepower and advanced weaponry. Then the first signs of the Empire's arrival flashed on the radar. Kane's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the screens, his fingers gripping the armrest of his command chair. There, coming through the black void of space, were the Empire's ships, massive, cold, and imposing. They seemed to swallow up the stars in their wake as they drew closer. But what shocked Kane most was their sheer number. Thousands of ships, all converging on Earth's position. "They're here," Morales whispered, almost breathless. "Get the fleet into position," Kane barked, snapping back into command mode. "All ships, prepare for battle." The calm that had filled the room moments ago was gone. The air felt electric with tension. The Deathworlder ships lined up alongside Earth's fleet, their massive weapons powered up, ready for action. Kane could feel his pulse quicken as he braced himself for what was to come. The battle started almost immediately. The first wave of the Empire's fleet descended like a storm, their dark ships cutting through space with terrifying speed. The Deathworlders didn't hesitate. They opened fire first, their weapons unleashing a barrage of powerful, directed energy blasts that hit the Empire's ships with deadly precision. The explosions lit up the darkness of space, bright as a star-going supernova. But even the Deathworlders' advanced technology couldn't stop the Empire from retaliating. Kane's fleet joined in the assault, Earth's ships letting loose their own weapons in defense of their homeworld. For the first few minutes, the battle seemed to go in their favor. But soon, the sheer power of the Empire's forces began to overwhelm them. Their ships were vast, and their numbers seemed endless. For every Empire ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Captain, we can't hold them off for long," shouted Lieutenant Morales as she watched the battle unfold from her station. "They're too powerful." Kane's mind raced as he searched for any edge they might have. The Deathworlders were powerful, but the Empire had a fleet that dwarfed anything Earth had ever seen. And yet there was something about the Empire's tactics that made Kane uneasy. They weren't fighting with the same intensity as the Deathworlders, almost like they were testing their strength, rather than engaging with full force. "They're probing us," Kane muttered, piecing together the pattern. "They're not fighting to win. They're testing our defenses." "What does that mean for us?" Morales asked, her voice filled with dread. "It means they know they can destroy us. If they want to," Kane replied grimly. "But they're waiting for something." The next wave hit faster and harder. The Empire had grown impatient. Their firepower doubled, and now their ships came in waves, relentless and swift. The Deathworlders' ships responded in kind, unleashing a storm of destruction. The air on the bridge of Kane's command ship felt thick with tension as explosions rocked the entire fleet. The sound of alarms blared in every corner, and the crew scrambled to maintain control of their ships. Some Earth ships were already reporting significant damage. "Get us out of here," Morales shouted as another blast hit too close to their ship. Kane stayed rooted to his seat. He couldn't afford to retreat. Not now. He looked out at the vast expanse of space, where the battle raged. Earth's fleet had held their ground, but at great cost. And then, from the depths of the chaos, something unexpected happened. A single, smaller Empire ship broke off from the main fleet and moved toward Earth's flagship. Kane's heart pounded. What was this? A scout? A commander? "Prepare to engage," Kane ordered, gripping his chair tighter. "We can't let them get any closer." But the Empire ship didn't open fire. Instead, it released a small capsule from its belly, which glided slowly toward Earth's flagship. Morales's eyes widened. "Captain, they're sending a message, a direct transmission." Kane knew that this wasn't just an attack. It was a challenge. They wanted to talk. And Kane realized, with a cold shiver, that the true fight was only just beginning. The transmission came through clear. The voice on the other end was smooth, calculating, and cold. "We know what you are, Captain Kane. We know what your Earth has become, and we know that you cannot survive what is coming." The words hung in the air, and Kane felt the weight of them sink deep into his chest. The Empire was not just a force of destruction. It was something far worse. And whatever it wasn't just fighting for survival. It was fighting to extinguish humanity. And as he looked at the damaged fleet around him, Kane knew they had just entered a war unlike any other. A war where Earth's greatest weapon might not be enough. The battle escalates. The Empire's cold transmission still echoed in Kane's mind as he stared at the viewscreen. The enemy ships continued to advance, relentless in their pursuit. The message they had received wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. Kane's instincts told him this was no ordinary battle. The Empire was testing Earth, pushing them to their limits before making the final devastating strike. "Captain, the Empire's ships are pulling back," Morales said, her voice tinged with confusion. "They're retreating from the battle, but not fully. They're regrouping." Kane narrowed his eyes. "It's a trick. They're not leaving. They're reorganizing for something bigger. Get all units ready for another wave." His heart raced. Earth's fleet was battered, but it wasn't broken. The Deathworlders fought fiercely beside them. Their ships an unstoppable force, but even they seemed to recognize the gravity of the situation. The Empire's true power hadn't yet been revealed. But Kane couldn't let his crew see doubt. He straightened his posture and addressed his team. "We're not backing down. Earth will stand and fight until the very end. Our enemies may have numbers, but they don't have what we do. We have the heart of humanity, something they can never understand." Morales nodded, her determination unwavering. "Aye, Captain." The minutes stretched into what felt like hours as both sides prepared for the final phase of the battle. Tensions were high, with each ship in Earth's fleet and the Deathworlders' forces waiting for the next move. Kane's mind raced, trying to piece together the Empire's strategy. Why retreat now? Why not press the advantage and crush them while they were vulnerable? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flash of light on the radar. The Empire wasn't retreating. They were shifting tactics. Kane's eyes widened as he saw a massive formation of ships appear on the horizon. This wasn't just a wave of enemies. This was a calculated strike. "They're bringing in reinforcements," Morales said in disbelief. "A lot of them." Kane's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Prepare for a full assault. Lock weapons on their flagship. We take out their command center. We take out their army." The battle had just reached its most critical point. The Empire's reinforcements arrived in the form of massive dreadnought-class warships, each capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single strike. Their advanced energy weapons flared as they opened fire on Earth's fleet, and the shockwaves from the blasts were felt on every ship. Kane's heart pounded as he watched the destruction unfold before his eyes. His fleet was outnumbered, and even the Deathworlders' advanced technology couldn't keep up with the Empire's firepower. "Captain," shouted a voice over the comms, "the flagship is under heavy fire. Shields are failing." Kane clenched his fists. He had known this was coming, but the reality of the situation was worse than he could have imagined. The Empire had the power to wipe out entire planets, and now Earth's last line of defense was in jeopardy. He turned to Morales. "How long until we can reinforce the flagship?" "Not long enough," she replied. "We're losing ships faster than we can replace them. The Empire's firepower is too overwhelming." Kane exhaled deeply. He had to make a decision. "We need to launch a counteroffensive. I don't care what it takes. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The orders were given, and Earth's fleet surged forward in a desperate counterattack. The Deathworlders followed suit, their ships weaving in and out of enemy fire, striking with deadly precision. The battle in space was now a violent blur of light, explosions, and fire. Kane's flagship took a hit, shaking violently as an Empire dreadnought fired its main cannon. The impact sent a shockwave through the ship's hull, and the lights flickered. "We've got breaches on decks 7 through 10, shouted the communications officer. "Hull integrity is holding, but we've lost power to half the weapons." "Divert all remaining energy to the forward shields," Kane ordered. "We need to hold the line." Amidst the chaos, Kane saw something unexpected. A small strike force of Empire ships broke off from the main group and made a beeline for Earth's outer defenses. It was a diversion, a tactic meant to split their forces. Kane knew this was their chance. If they could take out these ships quickly, they might be able to turn the tide of battle in their favor. "We need to take those ships out now," Kane barked. "Prepare the Deathworlders for an assault." The Deathworlder fleet was already in position, and without hesitation, they moved in. Kane could feel the intensity of the battle reaching a crescendo. The Empire's reinforcements were pushing back hard, but Earth's fleet wasn't done yet. Every ship, every fighter, every weapon was now fighting for the survival of humanity. The first Deathworlder ship streaked across the sky, charging into the heart of the Empire's diversionary group. The battle was brutal, with the Deathworlder ships taking heavy hits as they dove in to strike. Explosions rocked the battlefield as massive plasma cannons erupted into the sky, and the Empire's ships began to crack under the pressure. But even as the Deathworlders fought with all their might, the Empire wasn't backing down. Their reinforcements seemed endless, as if they were drawing from an infinite supply of ships and weapons. "Captain," shouted Morales, her voice strained with fear. "They're bringing in another fleet. They've outnumbered us 3-1. The words felt like a blow. Earth's forces were being torn apart, and despite their best efforts, they were losing the battle. But Kane wasn't ready to give up. "We fight, no matter the cost," he said firmly. "We fight for Earth. We fight for humanity." Suddenly, the Empire's fleet stopped. For a moment, there was a deafening silence in space. The firing ceased. The rumble of battle faded away, leaving only the sound of Kane's breathing. He stood frozen, unsure of what was happening. On the view screen, a strange figure appeared, an emissary from the Empire, floating within a small shuttle, alone and unarmed. Kane felt a wave of confusion wash over him. "What is this?" The emissary's voice came through the comm system. "This battle is meaningless, Captain Kane. Surrender now, and we will spare your people. Continue to resist, and we will destroy you." Kane's heart pounded in his chest as the weight of the situation bore down on him. This was it. The Empire had already proven its power. Would Earth surrender, or would they choose to fight to the bitter end? As the silence stretched, Kane made a choice. "No," he said firmly, looking out at the stars. "We will never surrender." And with that, the final battle for Earth began. The turning point. The silence that followed the Empire's ultimatum was broken by the cold sound of the comm system crackling to life again. Kane's eyes remained fixed on the view screen, his mind racing as the emissary's words echoed in his mind. His decision was made, but the reality of it hit hard. Earth was vastly outnumbered, and their most powerful weapons were starting to fail. Still, in that moment of stillness, something changed. Kane could feel it. His crew, the Deathworlders, and even the remaining ships in Earth's fleet shared the same resolve. They weren't giving up. Not now. Not ever. The emissary's voice returned, still confident and cold. "You are making a grave mistake, Captain Kane. You have no hope of defeating us." "Don't underestimate humanity," Kane muttered under his breath. His voice was firm as he spoke to his crew. "We've fought against impossible odds before, and we will fight again. Let's show them what we're made of." The next few minutes were a blur of action. Kane ordered the fleet to initiate a full offensive, hitting the Empire's forces with everything they had. The Deathworlders were already ahead of the game, charging their most powerful weapons and firing them with deadly accuracy. Earth's ships, though battered, responded with all the firepower they could muster despite the damage. Every ship, every weapon, every fighter was pressed into action. The Empire's reinforcements began to move in, but Kane noticed a pattern. They were slowing down. They weren't pressing forward with the same aggression. The longer they hesitated, the more vulnerable they became. "Captain," shouted Morales, eyes wide with realization. "They're hesitant. Something's off. They're not acting like they did before." Kane's mind snapped into focus. This was their opening. The Empire was overconfident, and it was this hesitation that was giving Earth the advantage. "Target their command ships," Kane barked. "We're going after their flagship. If we can disable it, we can break their command structure." Earth's fleet moved in, and the Deathworlders followed suit. They had fought together before, but never against an enemy as formidable as the Empire. Yet in this moment, Kane felt the raw power of humanity's resolve. He wasn't about to let them back down. As the fleet closed in on the Empire's flagship, the battle raged around them. Ships exchanged fire, missiles streaked through space, and explosions shook the entire battlefield. The Empire had the power to obliterate Earth's fleet in seconds, but their hesitation was costing them dearly. Earth's forces were fighting not just for survival, but for the right to exist. Kane's heart pounded as he watched his own ship take another hit, the shockwave rattling his teeth. The bridge lights flickered, but he held his ground. "Shields down to 20%, reported his tactical officer. "Keep them up as long as you can," Kane ordered, gritting his teeth. "We're almost there." Then it happened. From the depths of the battle, the flagship of the Empire came into view, looming like a dark monster among the chaos. Its enormous form overshadowed the surrounding ships, a symbol of their terrifying might. But Kane saw the cracks. The ships surrounding it were faltering. The hesitation he had sensed was spreading. Now was their chance. "Fire!" Kane shouted. The first volley of energy weapons exploded across the flagship's hull. The Empire retaliated immediately, unleashing a barrage of their own. The battle between the two behemoths was intense, each strike a violent clash of power and resolve. Kane's ship rocked with another hit, but the weapons had done their damage. The Empire's flagship was reeling. The Deathworlders fired again, and this time, a massive explosion erupted from the flagship's port side, sending shockwaves through the space around them. For the first time in the battle, the Empire's forces faltered. The flagship was wounded, and the command structure was starting to break down. Ships that had been organized in tight formations now began to drift and scatter, losing coordination. "They're losing control," Morales said in disbelief. "It's working. We're actually pushing them back." But just as hope began to rise, Kane saw something that made his blood run cold. Another wave of Empire ships appeared, far larger than any they had faced before. Hundreds of dreadnoughts, even more powerful than the last batch, emerged from the dark edges of space. The Empire wasn't done yet. They had been hiding their full strength, and now they were bringing it to bear. "Captain," shouted Morales, "they've called in reinforcements. It's over. There's no way we can fight them off." Kane's eyes narrowed as he looked at the overwhelming force now bearing down on them. His ship, Earth's fleet, and the Deathworlder's ships, they were all on the brink of being wiped out in one fell swoop. But then Kane remembered something. The Deathworlder's secret weapon. Something that they had kept hidden until now. His gut told him that they were about to unleash something that could change the course of this battle, but it would come at a cost. He turned to Morales. "Get me a direct line to the Deathworlder, Commander. Now." The comms buzzed for a few moments before a voice came through. "This is Commander Tukor." "What is it, Captain Kane?" "We need everything you have, Commander," Kane said urgently. "We can't stop them without your help." There was a long pause before Tukor spoke again. "You will have it. But know this, Captain. The weapon we're about to deploy is not without risk. It will destroy everything within a 100-mile radius, including us." Kane's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't hesitate. "Do it." The Deathworlder's ships began to glow with an ominous energy, their massive weapons charging to full power. Kane felt a sense of dread and anticipation flood through him. This was the moment, the turning point. As the Empire's reinforcements charged forward, the Deathworlders unleashed their weapon. A brilliant flash of light, brighter than any explosion Kane had ever seen, erupted from the Deathworlder fleet. The wave of energy spread outward, engulfing the Empire's reinforcements in an instant. The results were devastating. The Empire's new fleet disintegrated in seconds. Ships, large and small, were reduced to nothing more than dust and debris in the blink of an eye. But as the destruction spread, Kane's heart sank. The Deathworlders were paying the price. Their ships began to break apart, their energy reserves drained by the catastrophic release of power. "We've won," Morales said, her voice filled with awe. "But at what cost?" Kane looked out into the darkness of space, his mind full of questions. The Empire had been defeated for now, but the price of victory was steep. The Deathworlders had saved Earth, but they had paid the ultimate price for it. And as Earth's fleet began to regroup, Kane knew one thing for certain. The war was far from over, the aftermath of victory. The space around Earth was littered with the remains of the battlefield. Wreckage from the Empire's massive warships drifted in a cloud of debris, with only a few of the Empire's ships still floating, their systems malfunctioning or completely disabled. The space was eerily quiet, except for the hum of Earth's fleet and the Deathworlder ships, now heavily damaged but still holding strong. Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out into the void of space. The battle had been won, but the cost of that victory was far greater than he could have imagined. The Deathworlder fleet, now reduced to mere remnants of its former power, was struggling to stay intact. There had been no time to fully process the destruction of the Empire's reinforcements. The battle had ended so suddenly, it was almost impossible to believe. But the truth was undeniable. The Deathworlders had given everything. Their fleet had charged into the Empire's forces, unleashing a weapon of such devastating power that it had obliterated their enemies, and nearly themselves in the process. "Captain," Morales spoke, her voice quiet but filled with concern. "We've received a report from the Deathworlders. Their ships are losing power rapidly. We need to assist them, or they'll be gone within hours." Kane's eyes tightened. He had feared this moment. The Deathworlders had sacrificed themselves to save humanity, but they hadn't expected to survive this long, let alone face the task of returning to their homeworld after this battle. "Get our repair crews to their ships, now," Kane ordered, trying to suppress the heaviness in his chest. "We'll help them any way we can. They saved us. They deserve to know that we won't leave them to die." He looked out again at the scene before him. The battle was over, but the scars would remain. The destruction the Empire had caused would be felt for years to come. Entire fleets were lost, and humanity had been pushed to the brink of annihilation. Yet, for the first time in a long while, Earth had fought back with everything it had. And it had worked. On the Deathworlder flagship, Commander Tukor's voice came through the comms, hoarse and weary. "Captain Kane, we did it. The Empire is shattered. You have your victory, but know this. The weapon we unleashed, it was a one-time thing. We can never use it again." "I understand," Kane replied, his tone somber. "You've saved us. We owe you everything." Tukor's voice was quiet, filled with a quiet pride. "We fought for more than just a victory, Captain. We fought because we believed in your people. We saw what humanity could become when pushed to its limits. We're proud to stand with you." As Earth's fleet approached the Deathworlder ships to offer assistance, Kane looked around at his crew. They were bruised, battered, but alive. The battle had been won, but they had paid a high price for it. Yet there was an undeniable sense of unity among them. Humanity had shown its strength. But this was just the beginning. "We'll get the Deathworlders the help they need," Kane said, his voice firm. "But we must be prepared for what comes next. The Empire is only one part of a much larger galaxy. The war is not over." Morales nodded. "What do you suggest we do, Captain?" "We rebuild. We help the Deathworlders, and we prepare for the next conflict. This war has shown us that there are enemies out there far more powerful than we imagined. But it's also shown us that humanity will never go down without a fight." Kane turned toward the viewscreen once more, watching as Earth's fleet maneuvered to assist the Deathworlders. The stars beyond seemed quieter now, as if they too were waiting for what came next. In the days that followed, Earth's fleet and the Deathworlders worked together to salvage what they could from the wreckage. The Deathworlder ships, though heavily damaged, were patched up and made operational again. Their most advanced technologies were being shared with Earth, and new alliances were forged between the two species. But even as they repaired their ships, Kane couldn't shake the feeling that this fragile peace was only temporary. The message from the Empire's defeat had spread like wildfire. The galaxy was watching. The war might have ended with Earth's victory, but the universe had just learned something important. Humanity, the so-called underdeveloped species, had stood its ground against a much greater power and survived. And while the Empire's ships were retreating, Kane knew that other powers would be watching, wondering if Earth was the next big threat. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and the question now was whether humanity would rise to meet it or fall under the weight of new challenges. Kane's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of a new transmission. This time, it wasn't from the Empire. It was from another alien species. "Captain Kane," the voice said, "we have watched your victory, and we are impressed. But know this, you have no idea what you have just set in motion. The galaxy is a much darker place than you understand. And now, you have our attention." Kane's eyes widened, and his fingers clenched around the armrest of his chair. The war for Earth might have been won, but the real battle was just beginning. The Empire was not the only enemy in the galaxy, and if humanity hoped to survive, they would need more than just their strength. They would need allies, strategy, and the courage to face the unknown. "Bring them on," Kane said softly, staring out into the void once more. And as Earth's fleet slowly regrouped, Kane couldn't shake the feeling that the next chapter of humanity's struggle for survival was about to unfold, one far greater and more dangerous than anything they had faced before. The dark horizon, the quiet after the battle felt too still, like the calm before a storm. Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing out into the vastness of space, his mind racing. The warning message from the unknown alien species still echoed in his mind, stirring up both unease and determination. Earth had won the battle against the Empire, but the real war was only beginning. As Earth's fleet and the remnants of the Deathworlder ships began to regroup, repairs were underway. The Deathworlders, though weary and badly damaged, had helped stabilize the situation. Yet, even as Earth's people and their new allies worked together to rebuild, a chilling thought lingered at the back of Kane's mind. What had the mysterious voice meant by, "The galaxy is a much darker place than you understand"? Kane was about to request an update on the fleet's condition when the comm system suddenly buzzed to life. It was a transmission from the Dithworlder commander, Tikor. "Captain Kane." Tikor's voice came through, hoarse but filled with determination. "We've received disturbing news. The Empire was only the beginning. We've intercepted messages from several other factions. Your victory has drawn the attention of powerful enemies. There are forces far more dangerous than the Empire, and they are coming." Kane felt a chill run down his spine. The Deathworlders had always been cryptic about the other galactic powers, but this was different. "Tell me everything," Kane said, his voice steady but his mind already racing. "We've gathered intelligence," Tikor continued. "These factions, the ones who are now aware of Earth's resistance, they're not like the Empire. They are older, more ruthless, and they have technology that far exceeds anything the Empire ever had. The galaxy is divided into empires and factions, each with their own plans. Some have no interest in peace. Some see your victory as a threat." Kane felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The Empire was just a stepping stone, a small piece in a much larger game. Humanity had been fighting to survive, but now it seemed the stakes were much higher. "Who are they?" Kane asked. He needed to know who Earth was truly up against. Kor hesitated, the static from the comms adding weight to the pause. "They are the Annihilators, a race so ancient and so powerful that even the Empire feared them. They are coming." The words hit Kane like a punch to the gut. Annihilators. The very name sounded like a death sentence. His mind reeled as he thought about how the Empire, a seemingly unstoppable force, had been shattered by their own hubris. And now this new enemy, something even worse, was on the horizon. "I don't know if we can prepare in time," Kane muttered to himself. "We're already stretched thin with the damage to our fleets and the Deathworlder ships, but we can't just sit back and wait for them to arrive. We need a plan." Days turned into weeks, and the preparations for the worst continued. Kane had assembled a team of the brightest minds from Earth, the Deathworlders, and their allies. They worked tirelessly to assess the situation, gather intelligence, and fortify Earth's defenses. Yet, despite their efforts, one undeniable truth loomed over them. The Annihilators were coming, and humanity had no way of knowing how strong they really were. The mood was tense. Earth's people were beginning to sense that something was wrong. News of the battle spread quickly throughout the solar system, and the whispers about the Annihilators grew louder. The hope that had surged with the defeat of the Empire was now giving way to a creeping fear of what might lie ahead. Kane met with Tikor and several other military leaders, including Morales, to discuss their next move. "We don't have the luxury of waiting," Kane said, his voice sharp. "We need to strike first. If we can force the Annihilators to reconsider their plans, we might have a chance. But we don't have much time." Kor nodded, his face grim. "The Deathworlders are with you, Captain Kane. We owe you our lives, but we must be prepared for a fight unlike anything we've ever faced." Morales stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the holographic map of the galaxy. "The Annihilators don't play by the rules. We'll need more than just military power. We'll need intelligence, strategy, and new alliances. If they're as powerful as you say, they won't be defeated with brute force alone." Kane agreed. There was so much they didn't know about the Annihilators. They had no idea where the enemy fleet was or how many ships they had. All they had were the whispers of a few defeated factions and the remnants of the Empire's data. The first step, Kane decided, was to rally their allies, whatever they were, wherever they were. If the Annihilators were coming for Earth, they would have to face not only humanity, but the combined strength of every species who stood with them. "Morales," Kane said, turning to her, "I want you to open negotiations with every race that has resisted the Empire. Let's get the word out. Earth is not alone in this. The days were filled with frantic diplomacy and military preparations. Kane watched as his crew and the Deathworlders worked side by side, pushing the limits of their technology to rebuild their fleet and fortify their defenses. Earth's strength lay not only in its ability to fight, but in the people who were willing to give everything for survival. And then the message came. A faint signal, barely detectable, was intercepted by one of Earth's outer defense stations. It was a simple transmission. A warning. The Annihilators were on their way. The galaxy was about to be thrown into chaos. As Kane stood at the command console, staring at the message, a sense of clarity washed over him. Earth had fought to survive against impossible odds. It had defeated the Empire, a force far beyond its capabilities. But now, the real battle would begin. The Annihilators would test humanity's resolve, and Kane knew that if they were to win, they would need to be more than just survivors. They would have to become the true champions of the galaxy. With a deep breath, he issued the order. Prepare for war. The time for waiting was over. The true fight for humanity's future was about to begin.